Welcome back. This is Inside Politics. Many thanks for staying with us. Nairobians can now expect changes in service delivery within the next 100 days. This is because the newly appointed Nairobi Metropolitan Services Director General has officially taken over the operations. And as Duncan Hemba now tells us, the Nairobi Rescue Master Plan is now in action.
2 days after being unveiled to the public, Major General Mohamed Abdallah Badi from the Kenya Air Force has officially taken charge of affairs of the Nairobi County. And he has hit the ground running.
We have already moved around 250 tons of garbage to Dadora, and it's an ongoing process, and I would like to assure everybody that we are fully operational and running the city.
Insofar as his game plan is concerned, the military man says his commander-in-chief has already set targets for the Nairobi Metropolitan Service Department.
I have been given almost 23 items to accomplish. Some have been given 100 days to showcase that they are implementable. And we have already started 2 days ago. And I can assure you we'll complete them within 100 days.
Everything has been mapped ready. Now is to implement. And you know, when we wanted to implement, there was political interference. So it was like people are being favored, others, but this time the new sheriff will be very fair and will take action on that. And we are trying to say, please, politicians in Nairobi, let's give the opportunity. This is the time we can put Nairobi right.
There will also be a paradigm shift at City Hall. Technically, Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko's powers have been clipped, as stated by Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala, who was in charge of the Nairobi Regeneration Committee.
Well, those functions are very clear, so all those officers who are dealing with those functions will report to the DG.
Then there is an elephant in the room.
I will task them firstly to bring an end to the corruption and to dismantle the cartels that have hindered the development of this county.
Cartels are not faceless. They are people who are known. Yeah, I think this is the time that the DG will have to profile some of them, and he must dismantle. If we want Nairobi to work, that cartel mentality must stop. And it has to stop from all levels. Both counties, nationals, we must deal with it. This is the time that we must bite the bullet. Probably that's why he is a military guy. He can handle it.
It is here at the KICC where the Nairobi Metropolitan Service Director General will be best as he seeks to make tables turn at City Hall. A military man who has been given a huge responsibility to dismantle cartels that are said to have held City Hall captive for years, from mayors and councillors to MCAs and governor. Well, will he be the game changer? As they say, only time will tell. Duncan Hemba, KTN News.
Thank you, Duncan. Mark, the Director General, Major General Badi, has said that he will clean Nairobi up within 100 days. I'm not sure if he's talking about cleaning up in terms of the garbage or the so-called cartels at City Hall, but the cartels, cleaning up the cartels is part of his deliverables. Are you holding your breath?
I am a bit confused, if I'm honest with you, Ben, because if you're going to deal with cartels at City Hall, then according to the DCI and the DPP, that cartel is the prison prefect, aka Sonko. Let's be very clear, the cases against Sonko clearly point to him being the sole proprietor of cartelship ever since he took office. So the question then is not whether he's able to clean out these faceless cartels, is how is he going to be able to clean out Gideon Buvi Sonko, because the problem is Sonko. And let us not forget that Sonko still has access to the coffers at the county treasury. His CEC designate is the one who is going to be signing payments. So is Sonko going to use that to continue his games? Let us not forget that he recently fired his former CEC of finance, fired the chief officer Makodingo, and the reason he did that is obvious for everyone. It was because they were paying pending bills without giving due credit to Gideon Sonko. That is where the rubber is going to meet the road. Let me tell you, you can organize how to pick garbage, but where you're going to drop off that garbage is the biggest question. Secondly, this is a constitutional experiment, if you ask me. It's a constitutional experiment because the provision does exist within the Constitution, but is it workable? We've just created basically a Nusumkate government. How many times will this new DG sit with Sonko? And will Sonko even be able to understand the English the DG is talking to him in? Is Sonko capable of running a structured organization? If Sonko does not cooperate, what options does the DG have? If Sonko issues contrary orders in City Hall and the DG issues an order, who will the people fear most? What powers does the DG have? These are the questions that have got to be asked. But finally, let us remember, one of the things that Sonko has proven time and time again is he colors outside the lines. And that coloring outside the line means he's willing to bend the law in ways we've not imagined yet. And will we be able to contain the hurricane that is Sonko? Time will tell, but I have my doubts.
Kipchumba, we have a new Nairobi Metropolitan Services. Is this how we clean up Nairobi?
I think, Ben, we are still competing to know the color of the bottle, not the contents of the bottle. Because, look at it this way, Mike Sonko remains the governor of Nairobi. Mike Sonko has the political infrastructure in Nairobi to do everything he wants. In all this, it is Mike Sonko who are nobody else, because he saved himself from an impeachment. He now turns up in State House for photo sessions. That is a political genius of Mike Sonko. Whereas we cannot cast doubt in the spell of the general, there are other things we need to ask ourselves. When we talk about Nairobi Metropolitan, previously when you go to the Nairobi Metropolitan Authority, it defines Nairobi Metropolitan to mean Nairobi City, Kiambu, Murang'a, Kajiado, and Machakos. Where do you leave the other devolved units when you bring a general, when you want to implement the transport authority or the Nairobi transport area or something? How do you implement it in Machakos without compromising the quality of devolution there? The other thing which I want to help the general, if he's watching this show, he should not go to City Hall with the mentality of fighting cartels. The City Hall cartels are for a long time been proving to be bigger than even the people want to fight it. So what we must do and what the good general must do is to make sure that
saying it's a lost cause,
it does not end up in the hole where Sonko went.
Are you saying it's a lost cause that the new director, the director general should not focus, should not do that? Are you saying that you should just let the cartels run free?
No, Ben, what we should give the general came from an organized place. What we should give the general are the KPIs, key performance indicators. When I give you a function like fighting cartels, what are the performance indicators? And when you are in a political environment like Nairobi, which has been disorganized for the last 60 years, you cannot bring somebody who came from a uniform and a disciplined force where people take orders to a place where you must bribe MCAs, you must take people to Mombasa, you must threaten others with guns. It cannot work, Ben. What I think in my estimation should have been done was to ask the good general to just make sure that his KPIs are on the 4 functions that were taken back to the national government. And then again, what we must ask Senate and the National Assembly is to define what Nairobi Metropolitan is, because we do not want to use Nairobi Metropolitan as a backdoor system of fighting devolution. whereby we'll compromise the quality of devolution in Kiambu, Murang'a, Machakos, and in Kajiado.
Okay.
We need to have well-defined roles of the general. True, the other thing, and as a final point, Ben, what State House and President Uhuru Kenyatta must do is that he must insulate the good general from political interference. We all know how Sonko operates. If today they differ with the good general will stand to lose because Sonko is a political animal. The good general is not, and we are going to a political season. The next general election is 23 months away from now.
All right. Dismas, does the Director General of the Nairobi Metropolitan Services have enough authority to have whatever master plan he has, felt?
Well, the new Director General has got a lot of authority as well as political insurance from the President. So whatever agenda he's driving, in fact, it's not his own agenda. Sorry, I'm having a challenge. It's not his own agenda, but it's driving the President's agenda. But again, this is a confirmation. Sorry for that. But this is a confirmation that the Nairobi leadership has been a successful failure because the County Assembly has been unable to oversight Sonko. The Nairobi Senator has not been able to oversight Sonko. And all the elected members of the National Assembly have not been able to oversight Sonko. It's a cumulative leadership failure of all these elected leaders which has brought us to where we are, that the national government has to come back and take leadership. And in my view, we should look for all these elected leaders in Nairobi and give them a reprimand because it's their failure in leadership which has brought us to where we are, that we have to go back to national government where you are having an elected leader coming to run Nairobi. And this one may be a very bad precedent that in future, if there's any county and the president is unhappy with the management, he can easily get an elected person to come and take responsibility. So in my view, this was a move in the wrong direction because the Nairobi leadership failed to oversight. I mean, they gave Sonko a blank check. He was able to do whatever he wanted to do at his pleasure, and he did it with a lot of success. And then secondly, these are confirmation that our political parties in Kenya do not engage in very good screening processes. Because you remember Jubilee told us, give us Sonko, give us Igade, the rest is going to be peaceful. So in future, we need to look at our political parties and ask them whether, in fact, they're taking the right decisions for Kenya.
But looking at the president and the governor during this process, they look like two people who are very much in sync, like they are speaking, from the same, they're on the same page. Don't you agree? Dismas?
Sorry, I missed that.
I'm saying, looking at the President Uhuru Kenyatta and the Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko, they look like they're reading from the same page.
Well, right now the only person you can trust is President Kenyatta, because for him he's embarrassed that a county under a Jubilee governor is not performing. But for Governor Sonko, is a political animal, is looking at his political survival, is actually looking at 2022, why he's going to jump to another political party and campaign. So for Governor Sonko, you cannot take his word to the bank. The only person whose word you can take to the bank is Uhuru Kenyatta, and which is why the new Director General needs to be given unlimited support by these politicians who have been a successful failure, but more important by structured government agencies to ensure that he delivers. And if he's able to crush those cartels, and I doubt whether President Kenyatta will just say that there are cartels within the county government of Nairobi, which he doesn't know. So the new Director General gets into office knowing who are the cartels, faceless or otherwise, and he must crush them at the earliest opportunity. And believe you, the Nairobi residents are not really bothered whether they are cartels, whether he gets a lot of support. What they want to do is they just need service delivery. When they wake up in the morning, they want to be assured that there's water, there's no garbage, that Nairobi is orderly, that if you paid for your licenses, you are on a river road, you don't have funny traders right in front of your business premises. The Nairobi voter is sick and tired of mediocrity. And this mediocrity was brought to us by a political party which said, we are giving you Sonko, we are giving you Igade, take our word to the bank, they're going to deliver.
All right. Chero, does a new sheriff in town, so to speak, have what it takes to crush the cartels?
Director General, Major General Badi may actually be a fantastic, competent Kenyan. I did not know him until the president announced his appointment. But I just want to caution Kenyans about this growing militarization of civil service and legislative spaces. This is very, very dangerous. And as Dismas said, the very fact that Sonko is a product of the Jubilee government, and the Jubilee government is now removing Sonko and replacing him with Major General Badi, should tell us something. We must problematize the situations that we find ourselves in as Kenyans. If you look at how Nairobi metropolitan services spreading, it's like that encroaching, it's like the tide coming in. And as it comes in, it sweeps over so many areas, including places that hitherto did not fall under Nairobi County. We should be extremely cautious. And if President Uhuru Kenyatta has asked Major General Badi to fight cartels and fight corruption, and President Uhuru Kenyatta himself has failed to fight corruption, to slay this dragon called corruption, perhaps what President Uhuru Kenyatta should have done would have been to step down himself and allow Major General Badi to run the country, because if you have failed as a head of state, how do you expect your appointee to also succeed? And I'd like to remind the Major General as well that even as he has been given these tasks, and we know how disciplined the uniformed forces are, remember that there was one General Ali who found himself facing the ICC. And one has to be extremely careful, even when you're part of the uniformed and disciplined forces, not to overstep your mandate. And now with coronavirus, as I had mentioned earlier, where a lockdown might be necessary in Nairobi and of course throughout the whole country, be careful that you do not find yourself in a situation where you have committed crimes against humanity simply because you're following orders. And ultimately, if we look at the kleptocracy that Kenya is, we saw a report released this week about the 300 billion that has been siphoned. We don't even blink. We're used to this. Look at our debt ceiling of 9 trillion. Most of this money has been looted mercilessly. It's not that too little cartel in Kayole that is selling water. We're talking about hundreds of billions of shillings steadily siphoned. And Major General Badi has been tasked with the business of going to clean spaces that are corrupt, that are dirty. He might literally clean Nairobi, but he will never be able to get to the heart of corruption, because until we tackle the interests that go all the way back to the presidency, we will be spitting in the wind.
What do you think, Mark?
Just to interject, let's just be very clear that success in the war against corruption is a very interesting target. Because if we are to say that Uhuru Kenyatta has failed, then what will we say about the 3 billion plus worth of assets and cash that has been recovered since the war against corruption started? You cannot say that simply because the United States has been in Iraq and Afghanistan since 2002, then every president who's not finished that war should step down. For me, the only reason I would say that Uhuru Kenyatta should step down is if he stopped fighting corruption. For as long as that fight is going on in whichever shape, way, or form, he is still the only president we have. Secondly, you do not deploy people because you've succeeded, because by that calculation, then Uganda should not have any form of minister, because Museveni has failed in a lot in Uganda. So let's be clear, government is a going concern. If there is a need in Nairobi, we must feel that need. And the best that we can do is give the good general an opportunity to actually deliver, and then make sure that we check whether there is proof in the pudding that he will serve us. Outside of that, we fall into the trap of being hashtag Uhuru should step down, hashtag this, without actually realizing that what we really need are solutions on the ground, and what we've been given is a solution for Nairobi. And do we need a solution for Nairobi? Yes, we do. It will be too early a day to declare that the person will fail while we are well aware there are very many challenges that he will face, Sonko being the biggest one and his political acumen being that, but that does not mean that we should call for the resignation of people who've been duly elected without them having committed crimes that call for such an action. These are things that we need to be very careful about, and we like to say them simply because they give us that clout, or Kenyans love that negativity, but it is not a solution for Kenya.
Kipchumba, give us your thoughts on this.
I think, Ben, there is something that scholars must ask themselves. Between bringing General Badi to run Nairobi and bringing on board a new deputy governor, which one was the easiest? Because it is in there that lies the line. Because if, when Uhuru Kenyatta goes home in the next 800 days, we will question his legacy on devolution, because it leaves a lot of other questions and a bad taste in the mouth of all devolution scholars. Because when you do whatever you are doing now, the other question is it, are we, where are we leaving the other devolved units, and what is the message we are sending? Tomorrow, Kisumu County will wake up when they are tired, and the governor will be a friend to the president, and he will come to State House and say, I want to give you the health sector. Where are we going? And that's why we are saying our elected leaders in terms of parliamentarians have let us down, because they have not legislated some of these things. The Constitution gave us the guiding principles, but they have not percolated down the guiding principles to law so that they can even legislate and oversight the president. Who will now be oversighting General Mbadi? What will be the role of Senate on this? What will be the role of national government? In between, in those gaps, that is where the Kenyans will lose their money. And that's why I'm saying we need to interrogate between going to the Nairobi Metropolitan and having a deputy governor, which was the most suitable way. Two, up to now, nobody has answered the question, why was Sonko saved from an impeachment? Because that is also what Bichach is talking about, the war on corruption. The issue of saving Sonko from impeachment was where corruption came into interplay with politics. And I think, Ben, when we do these things without clear philosophy and principles, they might not be sustainable in the long run.
Bonawakili, you say it would have been easier to put in a deputy governor instead of a deputy director general, but we seem to have crossed the proverbial Rubicon in this. So how does this work from a legal perspective? What will be the work of the county assembly? How will the county assembly work with the director general in terms of implementing county plans?
And Ben, that is where we are saying we needed to have a legislation, because one will understand from reading the constitutional articles that the work that has been taken back to national government will be oversighted by the National Assembly. But here lies another problem. The National Assembly, as is currently, might not have the capacity to oversight some of those roles. We have to go back to the MCAs who will be interacting on a day-to-day basis. Okay. Two, we have to talk about, because of lack of costing and talking of human resource issues, what about the transfer of this human resource? And if tomorrow Sonko wakes up in the morning and says, I don't want this setup, what does the law say? Do we have a safe zone for like 6 months where Sonko cannot walk out? What are these? Because we do not want to go to something, the next governor comes and says, I don't want to be part of Nairobi Metropolitan. Where do we go from there?
All right.
If I may say something.
Yes, Sarah.
How I understand this takeover, and I would like to say, and it's a hostile takeover, the law of unintended consequences often kicks in. You see, you militarize civil service and the legislative spaces in Nairobi. You create a space where citizens are being given a subtle message that you dare rise up we can quash you. Because it is not coincidental that you have a Major General who is now the Director General of Nairobi Metropolitan Services. I would urge State House to be very, very wary of such a law of unintended consequences. And these unintended consequences is when you begin to crack down and militarize such services, you have a space where people rise up and refuse and revolt. And you will have potentially anarchy. And this anarchy, which is part of the perfect storm of coronavirus, is when you lock people down and say there's no access to food, no water, no anything, and you have militarized the space. So I would say whatever plans are being cooked and hatched in the background, and yes, we might want to credit the president for fighting and bringing back 3 billion shillings, but we're talking about $3 billion, 300 billion shillings that have been siphoned out of this country. We're talking about a medical equipment scheme that's 63 billion shillings worth. We're talking about an HCIT project also within Ministry of Health that's 4.9 billion shillings worth.
Right.
All dodgy, all shady. So even if we want to try and praise the president and say he's doing the best he can, and this Director General will keep following these instructions, we are stirring a pot for very serious trouble in Kenya.
Dismas, very quickly, give me your thoughts on the latest addition or appointment by the president, a military person in a civilian kind of office. It seems to be a trend by the Kenyatta administration.
Well, you know, there's really nothing wrong in having a military person running any institution in Kenya, provided they are retired. But understand for Major General Badi is still a serving officer. And these are very bad precedent because military officers are supposed to stay in their barracks and defend our borders from external aggressions. And wherever there's a crisis like now, you have a coronavirus, that's the only time you're supposed to be calling them out to come and assist in the national duties. But this idea that wherever there's a crisis, we have our faith in military men and saying that the only people who can manage the situation, in my view, it's unacceptable, and it's something that we are not supposed to encourage. Because you see, our constitution is very clear that we are supposed to be run by elected leaders. Nobody has elected Major General Ali to run Nairobi apart from the president, and he's only accountable to the president. Now, we are assuming that the president's selfish interest in the management of Nairobi are consistent with the voters' interest. What if President Kenyatta doesn't have the best interest of Nairobi at heart and is given General Badi these directions? What options do we have available? And on the issue of fighting corruption, I really have to empathize with Mark Bichache when he says that President Kenyatta has been a success. Now, when you say President Kenyatta has been a success in fighting corruption, who comes up with the success parameters? Is it Jubilee? Is it State House? Is it the people who are suffering in Mosocho because of lack of drugs? Is it EACC? Is it DCI? And what percentage of money has been collected during the time of President Kenyatta? And how much money has been lost during the time of President Kenyatta for us to come with those success parameters?
Okay.
Then you can look at the, you can look at the scoreboard and say, Eureka, President Kenyatta has done well.
Okay, that's a whole different discussion, Mark.
But by that measure, we have to say that Moi Kibaki and every president we've had has been a failure. But let's be very, very clear. I think we are misleading the public when we say what is happening now is unconstitutional. This is a constitutional provision that we gave ourselves. There's nothing unconstitutional happening. Whether it will work or not, that is the question we have to focus on. And secondly, we must agree that we needed to have a solution for the excesses of Gideon Buvi Sonko. I totally disagree that it was right for him to be saved from impeachment. I honestly believe he should have been impeached, and the sooner the better. But that said, it does not stop us from trying to clean up this city, and that is why we must support this thing, because it comes from a constitution we chose. Secondly, when we say that the interests of Uhuru Kenyatta could be against the interest of the Republic, that is not right to say, because he is the sitting president of this country. We voted for him, and the fact that we voted for him means that we have to guarantee him that trust for as long as he's not physically demonstrated otherwise that he's acting in the best interest of this country.
What do you think about the militarization of a lot of offices that are civilian otherwise?
Well, it's not just militarization, it's also the intelligence community that has been given a lot of jobs. And sometimes I'm conflicted. I'll tell you why I'm conflicted. I'm conflicted because, number one, are these the only places where we can find people who are not tainted by corruption to change our system? That is conflict number one. Conflict number two is this the right way that now we are militarizing our civil service? Of course, history proves that that is not the right thing to do, but desperate time calls for desperate measures.
Enough said. You're watching Inside Politics here on KTN News. Many thanks for staying with us. Let's take another quick commercial break. When we are back, we shall be waiting to hear from you. Have the final say.